Welcome, and thank you for joining for another whiskey review. Today, we take a look at the Springbank 18, the first one, 2009, 46% ABV. Dustin, many a Springbank 18 in our day
Yeah.
on this channel. This is where it all started.
It's the first modern one, I guess. I don't know if there's like 60s versions, but
There probably was. Oh. All right, so this is a sample from our good friend Mike B. Mike B, I was finally able to get you some whiskeys over, my friend. I hope you enjoyed them. Let me know what you think. Dustin, pick one.
yeah, they're fine. Close enough.
Close enough. This is the original Springbank 18, a whiskey we know and love so well, Dustin.
Yeah.
I don't know how many we've done or how many we've had, but it's more than a few.
Yeah. I was looking at this particular bottle a couple years ago. It was for sale for not too terribly much. Now, of course, it would cost a lot more to get.
Woo! Funky.
Yeah, if I remember right, Mike, these early releases of both the Long Row and the Springbank 18 were all ex-sherry, like refilled sherry. Mm-hmm. Could be slightly off because initially my first thought was Long Row 18. I know those were, but I'm pretty sure
This comes off like Long Row initially. Dustin, there is a buy here, pay here car lot right outside of my town. Called Funkies. And it's in pink, and their sticker is distinctive. And this just reminds me of Funkies.
nothing better than getting a 40% car loan.
It probably ain't far off.
A 25-year-old car.
But man, this is funky as it gets right here.
But dig in a little bit, Mike. You actually start getting a nice sweetness under that.
No, it is balanced. Not equally, but it is balanced to some degree by a strong sherry.
Well, I mean, the first thing I got here was just a punch of funk, like, whoa! But now that I'm digging in, I'm starting to get some nice sweetness coming through.
Where are the vinegar chips with this one, Dustin?
It has some vinegar notes.
Maybe.
You know, I'm almost getting... Now, this is a weird note. I got to think before I say this.
Go for it. Just say it.
I'm getting almost like absinthe notes on here.
With the sugar cube?
Yeah, with the sugar cube. Absolutely.
There is sweetness building.
There's a hint of this, like... There's a hint of that, man. I'm like, what is that?
Man, gritty, earthy, barley forward.
I'm not getting it anymore, but I got just for a second there, I got that hint. No, there it is again, yeah.
Man, it is just 70% funk, 30% sweet.
I'm even getting like a touch of like a wormwood note that you get on some of like the Craig Alekies and stuff. Like
Really?
Yeah.
Metallic?
No, not the metallic part, but that like the sweet part that comes through, like that like funky, chewy sweetness. A lot of wood smoke coming through here too.
Yeah, the cask is parting enough oak where you would think that this is either older than 18 years old or the cask is somehow imparted more oak in this particular release. It definitely comes off oak here, is my point.
I'm not getting a ton of peat, which happens on older Springbanks.
Agreed.
I mean, I think there is a peat in this funkiness that's kind of driving it, but it's not that distinct, kind of more classic, smoky peat note.
No, you can tell now they've definitely refined this down. Like, it's not as funky as this was, and it's sweeter.
Yeah.
It's different.
Springbank is using better casks today, I think, than they used back in this era.
I agree.
I don't think they're necessarily... I don't know if their malt's better. It may actually be a lesser malt because of changes in just yields and barley and all those other... new rules about, like, cleaning stills. Because I know back in the day you could be a little dirtier about your stills, which imparts flavor.
Yeah.
But no, this is... I'll tell you what, though, it's cleaning up quite a bit as I continue nosing it, Mike.
It's getting sweeter. You're getting more used to the funky dirtiness of it. I mean, but this is super funky and dirty for spring. This is the
first one.
This is the dirtiest, funkiest Springbank 18 I've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, it rivals any Long Row I've had in terms of that just punch of smoke and funk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to get a little bit of that, like, it's almost starting to hint on, like, a little bit of, like, a barbecue sauce note. A little get the kind of vinegar forward.
With dirt and clay.
But it's also kind of thin, Mike. Like, as aromatic as it is, I'm not getting, like, a richness or an oiliness on the nose. It does seem a little thin.
We don't have a ton of it to review.
No.
That might be just a symptom of fill level. Well, let's find out.
Yeah, go for it. But that is kind of been a critique I've had about Springbank, and I think again their mouthfeel's gotten better in the last few years. I don't know what they've done to enhance it, but I do feel like they've gotten a little bit richer. In the past, I think they were a little bit more, I don't know, the drying of the oak or something. I don't know. Maybe less oils came through because they were using more refilled casks. Who knows? But man, this is... I keep getting a little bit different notes, too. It's nice.
All right, the ABV feels pretty consistent. You initially put in your mouth, you get a lot of funk, a lot of earthiness, a lot of funk. As soon as it hits the mid-palate and slides down the back, sweetness. Sweetness, sweetness, sweetness. And here on the end, it's sweet with just a little bit of funk. It's amazing how as soon as you took it off the tip of your tongue, it was dirty and funky. And it just do what it did, instantly went to sweet.
Do what it did.
Do what it did. A little bit of gravity is all it took.
Yeah, I mean, you get a little bit of that Springbank sugar cookie note.
Good, too articulate for you.
On the finish, it has a very light peat note that kind of lingers, adding a little bit of hint of like a plasticky, almost, dare I say,
clay.
Slightly clay, Lafroig-esque, or maybe a Highland peat.
Dare I say a Bowmore clay.
I could get with you there too. Yeah.
There was a clay note for me on the nose. I didn't bother repeating it on the palate only because it went just funky and then sweet. But there's a twinge of clay. I will say again, Baijiu, which is a Chinese alcohol that they age in clay pots.
Okay.
Or maybe the clay base. Maybe that's it.
But it is thin.
It is a little thin.
It is thin.
It doesn't come off like the solid 46 that Springbank is these days.
Yeah, I mean,
Thin 46.
having a little bit more of this would allow a little bit bigger pour or taste, which helps in trying to kind of build into that. So that
I'm still not convinced.
Slight caveat here that maybe if we had a little bit more of this one, cask strength whiskeys you don't need as much. With 46 or sometimes bigger samples help. So I definitely, whatever my score is, there's a caveat that it's probably going to be lower than maybe it would be if we had a little bit more to taste.
I didn't have to share it with you.
I understand.
I'm kidding. Yeah. A little more straightforward of a Springbank 18 than what we get today. Mm-hmm. Straightforward, no nonsense. Obviously sherry cask maturation. Obviously funky, dirty Campbelltown whiskey. Dare I say funky, dirty Campbelltown whiskey like it probably should be? Mm-hmm. Am I really saying? Is that really wrong to say that?
I mean,
this is area characteristic.
This definitely brings me back to when I first started getting into Springbank. This has definitely got the funk turned up. Whereas today's whiskeys have taken on a much higher quality sherry note. They bring in some really nice bourbon casks.
People like sweet, bro.
Yeah.
Sweet sells. That's all bourbon is sweet whiskey.
But this is... It's funky and yet clean. It comes off initially funky, but then it cleans right up on the palate. Does the same thing on the nose.
I want this in my collection of Springbank 18s.
This is a nice one. It's very distinct. It's very different. Man, I just wish it was a little bit thicker. Just a little more mouthfeel. It has a nice finish, though. That little light peat note.
You ain't wrong.
It's lingering. It's coating my tongue. Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one to score, Mike, because... it's coming off, kind of low for me on the mouthfeel. Mm-hmm. But because the finish is so good, it's not nearly the negative. Because when you got a nice finish where it lingers, leaves a little bit of spice notes on your palate, that makes you kind of forget about the thinness on the arrival.
Let me go first.
Go right ahead.
89.
Wow.
Really good whiskey. I think this reminds me of some of the first Campbelltowns I ever had, which made me kind of like Campbelltown and like Springbanks in general. Like, I like the 25 first, as I've said many times before, but then when I got into Springbanks, I'm like, I like a dirt. I like a little dirt. I like Iowa whiskeys. You know what I'm saying? And, comparatively, I look at the releases now, they jazz them up with sherry. They sweeten them up comparatively. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that's the difference.
Yeah.
And the difference, I like funky whiskey. 89. You probably think I'm high. Give it to me.
I do. Yeah. So I was between 86 87. I'm going to give it the higher. I like the funk. It's the thinness that's coming through. It's really keeping it down for me. On top of that, I almost wish it went funkier or went sweeter on the end. It's like one or the other. Like I want a standout characteristic.
You don't want 70% funk, 30% sweet? You want 90% funk?
The intensity of the funk, I want to go up a little higher.
It
lacks a really like an intense note, which I always look for. And then the transition in here between the arrival and the finish, it's nice, but there's really not a mid-palate like experience. There's just kind of the arrival and the finish.
You're right.
And so, excellent, well put together. I wish it was in my collection because I wish every Springbank was in my collection.
Especially the 18s.
And I'd probably it's been $350 on a bottle of this just to have it, which I'm sure today's market it'll be extremely higher than that. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, it's really nice. I love it. Appreciate getting to try this one, Mike.
Oh, he knows we're Springbank fans.
Yeah, I think I may have been chatting with him on one of like the live streams, and he mentioned this one. So,
no, it's a good one. Anyway, I was excited about this. If you guys had a chance to try this one, let us know what you guys think. This is the first modern edition of Springbank 18, the 2009 release. Like always at 46%, but not like always super funky.
Yeah,
funkies. Anyway, if you guys had a chance to try this one, let us know what you guys think. Dustin, until next time, what do we wish the folks?
Happy historical drinking.
We'll see you then.